Welcome. This is the joy of coding, and in this video we're going to talk about for loops, which allow us to use less code to get more done. So why would we be using loops in the first place? Well, because less is more. Imagine for a moment that you wanted to print out the numbers from 1 to 10. On the left shows some example code. This is known as the brute force way of doing it. You would type the numbers 1 through 10 and you'd put a print around them. You might use copy and paste to help you do that. But imagine, instead of writing 10 lines, you could just write 2. So in general, 2 lines is going to be way better than 10, 100, or even 1,000 lines. Less code means there's less problems to test, fix, and change later. And this is a concept known as dry, or don't repeat yourself. So imagine for a moment that we wanted to not just print out the numbers from 1 to 10, but instead change it to print out the numbers from 1 to 100. On the left, you'd be doing a ton of copying and pasting. And on the right, if you just change the 11 to 101, boom, your 2 lines of code magically goes from printing the numbers 1 to 10 from 1 to 100. Awesome, right? And so this concept is known as dry, not repeating ourselves. Whenever we're copying and pasting, it's usually an indicator that there's a better way to go about solving our problems. And it's up to us as programmers to learn how to do it in that better way. For loops are going to allow us to automate repetitive tasks. Let's dive deeper into how for loops in Python work. So this is our example from the previous slide that allowed us to print the numbers from 1 to 10. So the longer way of writing it is over here. Let's walk through and break down each of these components in this for loop. So first we start with the keyword for. That's going to tell Python that we're going to write a loop structure. Next, we have our loop variable declaration. So even though there's no equal sign here, this is creating a brand new variable in our program. It's a special variable called our loop variable, and its purpose is solely for this loop. Then we have the keyword in, and finally we have our sequence, range. In this case, we use the range function, which is going to generate a sequence of numbers for us. But a for loop can be used with any number of sequences, which we'll look at in a moment. Next, we have our loop body. This is indented. So every line that you want repeated is going to be indented under the for line. Then we have our repeated code. In this case, if we looked at the long way, the code that's being repeated is our print, our call to the print function. So that's what's going inside our for loop. But instead of the numbers 1 through 10, we get to use our loop variable. So now let's take a moment and take this example and abstract it into a generic template that we can use to solve way more problems. So here is what a for loop template in Python looks like. For a loop variable in some sequence, do repeated code. So let's unpack that a little bit. The loop variable is a variable that gets assigned the next value in the sequence at every repetition of the loop. So the repeated code is going to be executed once for every element in the sequence, and the loop variable is what stores what value we're in within that sequence. The sequence can be not just a range of numbers like we saw in our previous example. It can be the characters in a string, the items in a list, or even the lines in a file. So the sequence can be a lot of different things in Python. Next, we have the repeated code, and that's the code that gets executed at every repetition of the loop, and it likely, but doesn't have to, use the loop variable. So let's take this template and walk through a couple more examples. So first, let's look at a for loop that uses a string. For char in the string hello, print char. So at every repetition of the loop variable char is getting the next value in the sequence or string hello. And so our print is going to execute once for each letter in the string hello. So this example code is going to output HELLO all on separate lines. Let's look at another example. So we've already looked at range for a for loop. Let's look at a slightly different version. So here I have for I in range 4, print I. My range function is going to begin at 0 and go up through, but not including the number 4, which means at every repetition of my loop, the loop variable is getting the next value in the sequence, 0, 1, 2, and 3 because it starts at 0 and goes up through, but not including 4. So the output of this loop is going to be 0, 1, 2, 3. Let's dive deeper into how range works. There's actually 3 different ways that we can call the range function in Python. So we've seen 2 of them already. First, we have range x. That was the example on the previous slide where we said range 4. We're going to start at 0 and go up through, but not including x. So we include 0, but we exclude whatever number is in the range function. So for example, range 10 is going to give us the sequence 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We start at 0, go up through, but not including 10. The second way we can call the range function is with 2 parameters, x and y. We're going to start at x, inclusive, and go up through, but not including y. So for example, range 5, 9 is going to give us the sequence 5, 6, 7, 8. We start at 5 and go up through, but not including 9. Now, there's one more way that we can use the range function, and that's with 3 parameters. So as in the prior example, we begin at x and go up through, but not including y. But this time we have a z parameter, and this parameter allows us to increment or step away from x by z every time. So one way that we can refer to this is that x is our starting point number, y is our stopping point because we go up through but not including y, and then z is our step. And in fact, if you look at the Python documentation for the range function, you will see start, stop, and step used when you're reading about how to use the range function. So let's look at an example here. Range 4, 12, 2. We're going to start at 4, go up through but not including 12, and we're going to go up by 2 each time. That's the step. So it's going to go up by even numbers, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And remember, we go up through but not including 12, which is why 12 is not included in our sequence. So now what I'd like us to do is take a look and try on your own with some practice problems. And if you're able to correctly predict the code's output, it demonstrates that you've mastered this type of loop. So let's look at an example. For j in range 1, 13, 3, print j. So take a moment, pause the video, work out for yourself what you think this will output. Did you write it down? If you said the output will be 1, 4, 7, and 10, you are correct. And the reason for that is because we go up through but not including the number 13. So 13 is here as the stopping point, but it's not included in our output. Let's take a look at another example. For k in range 5, negative 20, negative 5, print k. So take a moment, pause this video. Did you write down your result? Great job. If you output 5, 0, negative 5, negative 10, and negative 15, you are correct. And again, we're going up through but not including negative 20. This loop is a little bit different from the ones we've seen before because this time we're counting down by negative 5. And that's why this third parameter or z parameter is often referred to as the step rather than the increment, because a step can go up or down, whereas an increment implies that you're moving up. Great job. So if you were able to get these well, then you're ready for a couple slightly more challenging problems. Let's push your knowledge here with some challenge problems. For a letter in range 10, print hello. Do you think you have it? If you said the output will be hello 10 times, you are correct. Why? This loop is different because it's not using the loop variable. We have to create a loop variable. It's part of Python. It's part of Python's syntax and how the language is formed. But we don't have to use it. And in this case, we're not. We're not using letter in the loop at all, other than on that first line. So inside the loop body, we're simply printing hello. And so we're going to repeat the same thing over and over again without changing it 10 times. Let's look at another one. For I in range 2, negative 10, 4, print I. Do you think you have the output? If you said the output is no output, you're correct. And the reason for that is because we have created an impossible range. There is no way to get from 2 to -10 by going up by 4 every time. And when we give an impossible range to the range function, the loop doesn't execute at all. And so in this case, there will be no output. So great job looking at for loops today. Let's put your newfound knowledge to the test with a little bit more practice. If you'd like, there's a worksheet linked down below so that you can really see where your knowledge stands. If you liked this video and would like to see more, please post your questions and topics below. Thanks so much for watching.